Hello guys and gals, and welcome back to another episode of Creepypastas. Yes, Creepypastas, the series where we take a look at the non-gaming side of our favorite internet campfire tales. And this time, we look into the Alice Killings, a creepypasta about a strange series of murders that occurred in Japan between 1999 and 2005. So take a seat, relax, and enjoy the Alice Killings. The Alice Killings remain to this day one of the largest and unsolvable serial killings in Japan. From 1999 to 2005, a series of 5 killings took place. The 5 killings might have been completely different, if not for the calling card that the killer left at each crime scene. He would leave a playing card. It varied from killing to killing at each scene, in an obvious location that had Alice written on it in the victim's blood. Very few clues were found at each crime scene, and eventually the case went cold. Below are details of each killing. Sasaki Megumi. The first victim was Sasaki Megumi, a 29-year-old owner of a restaurant. Those who knew her described her as a headstrong woman with a short temper and a sharp tongue when dealing with her employees. She was known by her customers for her fine cooking and her dedication to her job. Outside of her job, Megumi was a very social individual and often went to parties. It was after one such party that she went missing. She decided to walk home from her friend's house. Seeing as she was only a block from home, and she was a bit too drunk to drive, several people offered to drive her home, but she shrugged it off. She was seen leaving the party at 1 in the morning, and this is the last time she was seen alive. The next morning, a couple walking in the woods about a mile from Megumi's house saw a large amount of blood on an overgrown and unused path. Curious, they followed it, where they found Megumi's body. She had been torn apart, her parts impaled on various tree branches. The couple called the police. It was the police that found the playing card crammed into Megumi's mouth. It was a jack of spades, which had the word Alice written on it. As previously mentioned, there were no fingerprints or any DNA to be found. There was vomit on the scene, but the female of the couple admitted that it was hers. Yamane Akiya was a barely known singer in a band that never played anything more than in various bars and community functions. His friends described him as a kind-hearted man who would never raise his voice off stage, and after his death his band fell apart, not having the heart to find a new singer. Akiya was abducted from his apartment on February 11, 2001. His bandmates were the last people to see him alive, as he had practiced with them earlier in the day. That night, his girlfriend came to visit him, and was surprised to find the house empty, and within days a missing persons report was filed, and a search for him began. On the security footage of the apartment, a hooded figure could be seen entering through a side door, and leaving with a large garbage bag that bulged strangely. The strange appearance was never accounted for, and no one saw the strange man in person. This man is widely believed to be the killer, but his face was never shown, and there appears to be some doubt. The following week, the owner of the bar, Yoshida's, where the band had often performed, was opening for the day, and was met with a grisly sight. Slumped at the table was Akiyo's body. His vocal cords had been ripped from his throat, and he had been shot in the head. His Alice card was a king of diamonds, and was found clutched in his hands, along with his ruined vocal cords. A teen girl, Kai Sakura had her whole life ahead of her. She was a sweet girl and well loved by her classmates and relatives. She wanted to go to college to be a fashion designer, and was a week from graduating high school when she was abducted. Sakura's family went frantic trying to find her, and the whole town was combed for the lost girl. Her body was found 2 days later, buried in a shallow grave. It didn't seem that the killer wanted her hidden, and on the contrary, had marked her grave with her Alice playing card, the Queen of Clubs. It had been taped to a stick and stuck on top of a grave. Sakura's body had been horribly mutilated. Her eyes had been carved from her body, her skin was flayed, and her mouth had been carved open. A crown had been sewn to her head, likely while she was still alive. No sexual crimes had been committed, either pre- or post-mortem. Along with Sakura's body was a note, written in straggly handwriting. It contained many disjointed phrases, some of which were unreadable. Death is a distorted dream. She will forever rule. And, ha-ha! Those which die are the lucky ones, or various phrases that had been written, among with others. A match to the handwriting was never found. These two were the last of the killings, and the least gruesome. Hayato and Hina were siblings and very close. Hina was the elder sister and was very stubborn. Her younger brother, Hayato, was very smart, and had skipped a grade, causing him to be in the same class as his beloved sister. The two rarely fought, as most siblings tended to. The two were found dead in their beds on April 4, 2005. The cause of death was a lethal injection. The children's bedroom window was open, and it was deduced that the killer snuck in quietly enough to kill the two without waking them, then snuck back out. Each child had held half of an Ace of Hearts playing card that, when put together, spelled out the word Alice. One very smudged footprint was found on their carpet, but closer inspection was made impossible by the severe damage done to the print. This was the only piece of evidence, other than the playing card, left at the scene. A year later, the mother of Hayato and Hina committed suicide out of grief. Their father, who is still alive to this day, is going through extensive therapy to get over the death of his entire family. At this moment, he is heavily depressed and is extremely medicated. Shortly after the death of the Oshiro siblings, a man named Suzuki Yuto was arrested for the murders. He was a bum with mental problems who claimed to not remember where he was at the time of any of the murders. Most damning of all, he was seen wearing a coat that had belonged to Yamane Akio. A bit of blood on the sleeve tested positive to be his. Yuto, who was raving at this point, claimed that a demon-black man with no face had given him the coat. Yuto was eventually released when a homeless shelter 5 miles from the Kai household claimed to have Yuto in their files for the night of Sakura's murder. Since there was no way for him to get there when she was abducted and back without being noticed, Yuto was released. On April 30, 2008, a producer known as Yogami P uploaded his first song to Nika Video, called Hitobashira Arisu, translated roughly as Alice of Human Sacrifice. This song is believed to be based off the Alice killings. It tells the story of a little dream who lures people into his world, and then goes on to tell the story of each Alice. The song has a few parallels with each killing, though. The first Alice, voiced by Maiko, was trapped in the woods, which is where Megumi's body was found. The second Alice, voiced by Kaito, was a singer who was shot by a madman. The third Alice, voiced by Hatsune Miku, was well-loved, became the country's queen, and was taken over by a distorted dream. The fourth Alice, voiced by Kagamine Rin/Len, was a pair of twins regarded as one Alice. They are described as a stubborn big sister and an intelligent younger brother. It also speaks of how they have yet to awaken, a possible reference to them dying in their sleep. In addition, the suits of the card found on each body were also mentioned. Yogami P has not stated for sure if the song has any relation to the Alice killings, but it is widely assumed. Well, that was quite something, save for the mention at the end. The tone remained well throughout. Now, the whole creepypasta sort of holds a place in my heart, since a lot of these Japanese localized stories like this, or LSD Dream Emulator, do tend to intrigue me a little more, but that's obviously just a personal reason for it. The story revolves around a set of killings, as we went over, and to some it might have felt real, but fortunately it wasn't. The killings don't seem to be real, as there's no substantial or credible article anywhere, and you would think if something as grisly as this occurred, then we'd see some form of mention. People don't really forget serial killers, you know. Especially one as surprising and animated as this. So no, this never happened, thank God. But I looked into it, you know, kind of in the same way as what if it was Mario? You know, if it was just posted on the internet in this live fashion, or on some web forum you might have been, you know, fancying around. It would have been more intriguing and, you know, even more scarier. I mean, when you think about it, people like this do exist all over the world. I mean, I've touched on this before, the concept of someone who, yeah, well, not directly this, but I mean, if you think of someone who, like this, would just stick a card in your dead limb, they do exist. I mean, these people are intelligent, they're calculating, and most of all, sick and deranged. It's not unrealistic, and the Alice killings can be an unfortunate reality. Anywhere you live, it doesn't matter. It could be Japan, the States, you know, Africa, wherever. Now, the story didn't really have much substance, and that's the really, really bad part about it to me. It's just like a look at some fake killings, with some pretty weak linking at the end. The only thing it had was some intrigue, but really it had no plot. It wasn't something like LSD Dream Emulator, or hell, even Pale Luna. I guess for this, all I can really say is, yeah, I was interested, and very much so. I mean, it was intriguing, but there wasn't a beginning, hell, a middle, or an end. It's just a look at some fake killings, which fortunately, that's how it should stay. But without some story to hold it together, I can't really say it's all good. It's like a glue. It holds all the intrigue, you know? I mean, and yes, it can build and give it an extra amount of, you know, give it some more flavor. But without it, like this, you just have a look at something. It's not really good to me. at least. In the end, I would always ask you, and I do ask you, what would you rate it and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Creepypastas, and if you like what you saw, then please like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.